This saga of Pithole is typical of the riot and recklessness of the regions where hundreds of thousands of worthless oil securities were sold, where Dr. A.C. Egbert, who had kept $1,800,000 in cash in his house, wound up broke in Cleveland, a harmless crank asking Rockefeller for a loan of $1 million, where even the train running along the Allegheny from Pittsburgh speeded so recklessly that the route was dubbed the Valley of the Shadow of Death, and whereas J.N. Camden recalled, the simple statement of a man's connection with oil was a severe blow to his credit. Now, this is not a very reputable business, and Rockefeller is a penny-pinching, parsimonious capitalist, and he's going into the oil business. What's he going to make of a business that's been chaos up till this point? Okay, skipping down, we're on page 56. The most revolutionary development for oil producers, next to the linkage of the regions together by rail, the region's capital R was an oil area that was just known as the City of the Regions, as the introduction of pipelines. That is the most revolutionary development, the introduction of pipelines. Early pipelines were built in 1863, relying mostly on gravity, such as the line from the Tar Farm to the Humboldt refinery. Samuel Van Sickle, S-Y-C-K-E-L, came to the regions as a producer and would have made money at Pithole if the teamsters had not devoured his profits. Teamsters, the people who haul stuff around. He determined to build a pipeline from the wells to the railroad. He was ridiculed even by his friends. Quote, "Do you expect to put a girdle around the earth? Can you make water run uphill?" The answer to such stuff, you know, he's supposed to, no. Can't make it run uphill, won't put a girdle around the earth, but I'm going to build a pipeline, you boneheads. But everyone ridiculed him. Quote, "He was so mocked that he was forced to eat in the kitchen of the Maury Hotel in Pithole, going in by the back way. But he built a line. With 3 relay pumps, oil flowed through 2 2-inch lines, side by side, for 4 miles. Then, as he related, the teamsters would, quote, drive a saddle of it, dig down to it, putting logging chains around it, and pull it up out of the ground." So the teamsters, who it was their livelihood to haul the oil, they would take barrels and take it to the railroad head from the wells. And they were not going to have this. You're not going to just take the oil, put it in this pipeline. That's our livelihood, damn it. Now that's just how polite and nice people get along in a laissez-faire situation. You've got to have the government. So anarchists, take note. People defend their way of life. They believe they have a right to it. And they'll use physical force in violation of other people's rights. And there's nothing but physical force to answer the situation unless you've got a government there, which had better use physical force. I mean, that's its definition. So he had ought to be able to build this pipeline. He ought to have a right to do this, but he was prevented. He hired 25 men to patrol it and so on. He lost the line because of debt, later got into ruinous litigation with Standard Oil, and died forgotten and penniless. Thank you for the first oil line. Henry Harley built the next pipeline. He was a colorful character, typifying the devil-may-care attitude of the period, an associate of Jim Fisk and Jay Gould, the Erie Buccaneers. He landed in jail, where his wife, a cultured woman, took up her abode with him. His wife moved into jail with him? That's what it says there. Henry Hartley built the next pipeline. He built a line that met even fiercer resistance from the Teamsters, who not only tore up the line, but also burned the storage tanks and the wells using the pipeline. Warning to anybody who would build a pipeline or use a pipeline. The governor called out troops to beat them into submission. It was Custer's last stand for the Teamsters. Did you know about that? The system of sale of oil now became simplified. So things are advancing. And, quote, the rails carried oil in barrels, and continued to do so for a long time, but wooden tanks, 2 to a car, great big tanks invented by Amos Densmore, came into use, and then were supplanted by upright iron tanks. By 1869, the horizontal boiler came along with a cupola or dome that allowed for gas expansion and thus reduced the toll of explosions and fires. Reduced the toll. Things get better all the time. Better, you know. We are better off now than we've ever been, and things look better for the future than they've ever looked before in the past. They used to be looking for technologies to reduce the toll of explosions and fires in the oil industry. How many of those do we have today? Quote, derricks were twice as high and wells were twice as deep as in Drake's day, the day when they very first drilled the first well. How deep do you think the wells at this time were? They're twice as deep and derricks twice as high. We routinely drill thousands of feet today. The deepest we've ever drilled, Cav, the deepest that we've ever drilled was started in 1970, commenced in 1994 on the Kola Peninsula in Russia, where they drilled to 40,000 feet. So the first oil wells, they were drilling to 300 feet. Years later in our time, we're talking about right now, 600 feet. Now the deepest we've ever drilled is 40,000 feet. That was a scientific experiment. Surely we only go a mile or two for our normal oil wells. You do know how thick the crust is. I mean, how much oil is there down there in different places, people? How much? Many of the wells became clogged with paraffin. A valuable new device was tried in January 1865. A torpedo, a flask filled with gunpowder, patented by Colonel E.A. Roberts. At 365 feet, the first experiment operated like a stomach pump. By 1869, nitroglycerin was substituted. So paraffin, a gooey substance or whatever, clog the oil flow. The oil's not run dry, you just need to clean it out. Nitroglycerin's very dangerous. You know, they later made it a lot safer into dynamite. But, quote, many a torpedo man met his maker sooner than he planned. Dropping these kegs of nitroglycerin into oil wells. Christ. The regions had a chronic economic problem that was a millstone around its neck. Overproduction. Bolarchy. They were just getting started. That's the early part of the industry. Maybe, I mean, you know, say it was overproduction. As long as he doesn't say that there needed to be any kind of a cure to that. That's just a fact that had to be worked out by the industry. In consequence, the price of crude oil skidded up and down, but mostly within a range below the subsistence level for the small producer. From $20 it fell to 10 cents a barrel. Now, it's damn good that Franklin Delano Roosevelt or Hoover or some other bonehead wasn't in office at the time. They would have said, we don't want the small oil well producers to go out of business. We want people who just have 1 or 2 oil wells to stay in business. So they'd try to prop up the price of oil, and they would probably did like they did in the Great Depression, just slaughter herds of cattle to try to bring the price of cattle up, and light piles of oranges and tangerines and grapefruit and stuff, light them on fire with turpentine, just or kerosene or whatever, just to destroy wealth in order to raise the price of the remaining wealth. You know, nonsense like that. It's good that they didn't have that kind of shit going on back here in the beginning of the oil days, so that this boom-bust cycle thing that was going on here was sort of able to figure itself out. But let's look at the swing of prices. It was at $20 a barrel, then it went down to 10 cents a barrel in December 1861. It shot up to $14 in July 1864, then down to $4 in August